please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions. I am Manisha Gupta, and today we will look at the protests that are taking place all over the country, and these are the questions that we are trying to find answers for. 1. What is the real reason behind these protests from the farmers? 2. Has the social media really changed the face of farmers' protests? And 3. Is it really possible to double farmers' income by 2022? There is a campaign going on in social media that has called for a nationwide protest using hashtag Gaon Bandh. And the idea is to close down villages and to not sell their produce to the cities. Causing a demand shortage, the farmers from election-bound states of Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, as well as those in Punjab and Haryana, will join their counterparts in Maharashtra to launch a strike from the 1st of June. Planning to stop the supply of farm produce like vegetables, fruits, milk, poultry products and food grains from the villages to the cities. So what are their demands? 1. To ensure minimum of 18,000 rupees as a monthly remuneration per farmer. 2. A complete waiver of loans. These farmers are protesting under the organization called Kisan Ekta Manch, and the movement began in April 22nd with over 12,000 tweets that day asking farmers not to work and sit at home from 1st of June to 10th of June. Now, to discuss this in detail, we have the president of Kisan Ekta Manch himself, Devender Sharma. Mr. Sharma, hi, good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, tell us, there is so much uproar that we have seen amongst the farmers, and more states seem to be joining this. What have you been doing? What really is the status right now? Because almost every other day, one or the other farmer association is standing up and protesting against something.
Well, for the last couple of years, we have seen the farmers' plight worsening with each passing day. And that is because despite record production, in fact, if you see this year also we are anticipating a record food grain production. Last year again it was a record food grain production and so on. And yet the plight of farmers is visible to the nation, because every other day farmers are dumping their produce onto the streets. Farmers are selling milk or providing milk free of cost to the customers. Farmers are, trying to put potato or tomato on to feed it to the cattle and so on and so forth. Now this is because the successive governments have been very happy to achieve the food grain production targets, but the issue of welfare of farmers, which means how much income is getting into the hands of the farmers, has not been on the political agenda at all. And that is the reason that the anger is spilling on to the streets. And we have seen in the last few months several efforts being made by farmer unions across the country to raise these issues, but unfortunately nothing has really made a dent somewhere that it should be visible as a policy initiative, that the government is really, the intent is clear to help out the farmers. And now we see more groupings taking place, and in the days to come I think we will be seeing more of anger, farmers' anger spilling onto the streets. And I think in a way they are justified, because after all, if the net income of a farming family remains static over the decades, what do you expect that farming family to do? If the average income of a farming family in 17 states of India, and this is what the Economic Survey 2016 tells us, if the average income of a farming family in 17 states of India is less than 20,000 rupees a year, which means less than 1,700 rupees a month, I wonder how these people are even surviving. And on top of it, Niti Aayog report itself says that between 2011 to 2016, which means 5 years period, the net income increase is only 0.44%, which means income for farmers has remained frozen all these years. Now, so therefore the anger is quite visible and is quite justified also.
Mr. Sharma, what has these protests achieved so far? We have seen government talk about the policies. There is framing of rules and regulations happening. What do you think it is lacking right now? What would you want the government to do to make sense of the issues that the farmers are facing right now?
See, let's be very clear. There have been a lot of pronunciations that, we are going to help the farmers. First it was, we'll provide farmers with minimum support price plus 50%, which was, the MS Swaminathan committee had recommended some years back. That didn't happen. Then we talked about, we changed the horse in midway, and we said we're going to double farmers' income by the year 2022. And now we have seen the finance minister saying that, and the government also acknowledging that we have already provided farmers with the C2 plus 50%, which their demand was. Means 50% more profit over the minimum support price, which is the comprehensive cost conclusion in the minimum support price. Well, nothing like that has actually taken place so far, and that is why farmers' anger is very, very loud and clear. Now, why is the government not doing it? Because politically, I think it is suicidal for any government to and they are told often that if you raise the prices for food products or for food grain products or for the for farm gate prices, then the inflation shoots up. And inflation shooting up is a crisis for any government. But I think that doesn't mean that farmers have to be kept impoverished. That doesn't mean that farmers have to be penalized for growing or cultivating crops. That doesn't mean that farmers have to sleep at night hungry. There are reports which says 58% of the people, population of this country, of the hungry population of this country, is actually comprising of farmers and farm workers. So the issue is very serious, and we are not finding a way how to help the farmers to realize the optimum price that he deserves. And in my thinking, everything will fall flat, because for the simple reason, if MSP plus 50%, according to Shanta Kumar committee, will only cater to 6% of the population, farming population, because only 6% farmers get the benefit of MSP in this country. 94% farmers are in any case dependent on the markets, and if the markets were so benevolent, I'm sure the crisis wouldn't have been so acute. Now, what we actually need now, we have reached a stage. Two things I would expect from the government. One, let's provide farmers with direct income support. And this is coming from an idea coming from Telangana. Telangana is providing farmers, all landowners, with 8,000 rupees per acre per annum as a direct income support. This will cover up the losses that they have over the years, been accustomed to. Secondly, there has to be a mechanism to provide farmers with a assured income. We cannot leave it to markets. We have seen that happening, even despite record production prices crashing in this country for the last 4 years. What we need is an assured income for farmers, for which the opportunity now is for the government to see that how do you set up a mechanism or set up an income commission for the farmers now. Because imagine if farmers are surviving in 1,700 rupees in half the country per month. I think this is deplorable for any nation. It's shameful for any nation. And I think we need to provide at least a minimum of 18,000 rupees per month to a farming family to survive. And why not? After all, they produce economic wealth for the country. The country must compensate the farmers for producing that economic wealth.
Mr. Sharma, what we also have seen happen in the last few weeks or month has been that the younger farmers are also joining this protest. So that is one part of it. And the protest also is on social media now. I mean, as you mentioned, Twitter really has been something that has come to the rescue of many of the farmers. Do you think that will make a very huge difference now?
I think that's a very positive development, because I remember when I used to be a lone voice on the social media, and we would like to prop up the farmers to come and join Twitter, Facebook, and so on. But eventually, gradually, the younger people say, let's be very clear. Today, the farmer is a literate man by and large, but their children are educated now. And they understand, they are very serious. They understand why they are living in a agrarian crisis, or why they are faced with agrarian crisis. They understand everything. And so when gradually the word moved around, farmers joined hands, and now we have seen, farmers getting onto Twitter, for instance, and they realize that there is a political message in Twitter, and so they are getting onto Twitter. They had a campaign, a Twitter campaign some days back, and for 5.5 hours they were trending in the country. They're topping the trend in the country. Now, I think in a few days more, you will see more farmers joining the Twitter, platform and Facebook and so on. I think this is a new beginning. Farmers are now realizing that if there is a kind of a platform available to raise their voice, why not? So I find every other day I'm getting hundreds of messages on my WhatsApp and so on, where farmers are wanting to join. They're wanting to know if they could do this, if they could do that, and all those kinds of difficulties that anyone will encounter. And we are very happy that farmers are now raising their voice on the social media, which means the younger people are now taking on the responsibility. So there's a kind of a two-pronged battle now. One is on the streets and one is on the social media. And I think farmers are learning the tricks of the trade now.
Well, they sure are. But going forward, Mr. Sharma, what is the plan with the association like yours? What would you put out as a 3-point agenda, perhaps, that the farmers are looking for from these protests?
Well, first of all, let's be very clear. We had a long march, much talked about, much appreciated. Everyone applauded the farmers for being a disciplined force and so on. But eventually, if at the end of the day, farmers realize they haven't got anything out of it significantly, and you know, nothing has come into their hands so far. And promises, promises, and promises. Now, this was one of the major, you know, farmers' protests that we saw in this country in Maharashtra. But now the farmers are realizing that perhaps the best way would be to go for a crop holiday, which they did try some years back at some in Andhra Pradesh, but now they're going on a holiday themselves. So the farmers are now thinking that if they go on a holiday, that may perhaps wake up this government to understand that if the food supply is restricted, they will perhaps be able to think that there's a crisis brewing up in the farm. But what the farmers are expecting are basically, as you asked, if there are 3 things that they would like to, you know, the government to address immediately, is of course the first is the outstanding dues of the farmers, you know, the debt that they are under. Today we find that the total debt that the farmers are carrying with them is about 13 lakh crores, but that also includes the debt of the agribusiness companies and so on. So roughly about 6 lakh crores or 7 lakh crores is what is outstanding for the farmers. Now that should be written off. That's what their demand is, because after all, if their income has remained frozen for last 4 decades, what do you expect the farmers to do? They obviously have been surviving under debt. So one credit, then another credit to waive off that, to pay back that, and then another credit. And so the farmers have been living in credit, credit, and credit. And I think living under debt, there is nothing more inhuman than that. You know, all through your life, if you live under debt. Now, in that situation, farmers, the outstanding debt needs to be written off. Let's start with a clean slate. Clean slate would mean that you don't have the debt burden to carry. Then what exactly we need is a assured income for the farmers, which means if the government must have ensured that farmers, farmers are not saying that, you know, give us a check of 18,000 rupees a month. What they're saying is, let's say through the minimum support price, through the mechanism of Bhavantar schemes, which is price deficiency, or through the FPOs, the farmer producer organization, whatever the farmers earn, the remaining, if there's a gap between 18,000 rupees and let's say the farmers are earning 12,000 rupees, the remaining 6,000 rupees, the government should be able to compensate the farmers directly. Everyone now has a Jan Dhan account, so the government has no excuse. How do we pay? You can definitely transfer that money into the Jan Dhan account. That's the second most important thing. The third, of course, is that the promise of providing farmers with the minimum support price plus 50% has to be genuinely done. You know, you can't fiddle with something that doesn't actually benefit farmers anymore. So we need to go for the comprehensive cost that we know and add 50% to it. And in fact, let's not forget, Uttarakhand High Court has actually ordered or the state government to look into, given a directive that the price farmers should get should be 3 times the C2 cost. So they are in fact going much higher than the 50% that Swaminathan Commission had recommended. They are asking for 3 times the C2 cost that Swaminathan Commission had recommended. So I think it's very clear that there's a desperate need to provide more income in the hands of the farmers. And let's be very clear, if the farmers' income goes up, there will be huge demand, and once the demand goes up, the entire industrial economy would then, the wheels of the industrial economy will start running, and then let's see where the GDP will get up to. We are only struggling at 7.2 or 7.3. I can assure you, if 60 crore farmers were to get more money into their hands, our GDP would not be only going up as a booster dose, but will go up as a rocket dose.
The CEO of National Rainfare Area Authority, Ashok Dalwai, now joins us. He's the man behind the blueprint of how farm income can be doubled by 2022. Dr. Dalwai, hi, thank you so much. You know, we just heard what the Kisan Manch had to say about the kind of concerns that the farmers have and how the government, even as has been doing meetings with Niti Aayog, with states, etc. There are reports being submitted, but the farmers are still protesting. Why is it that there is still no urgency being shown towards formulating regulations at the earliest?
Yes, I can sense the urgency of the full report, but one of the terms of reference given to our committee was to parallelly make suggestions and recommendations to the government, And over the last 2 years, since we have been working, we have made parallel recommendations, and a large number of them have been already adopted. And if you see the new budget or the recent budget of the Union government, whether it is relating to marketing, whether it is relating to procurement or restructuring the export trade regime, all of those actually came from our report. So the community of the farmers and their stakeholders should rest assured that government has been working with the speed and with the integrity of doubling the farmers' income that it has set out to do.
Well, that point is well taken, Dr. Dalwai. But would you say that the process itself is taking a very long time? And then after this, I'm assuming the financial outlays will be worked as well. So how much more time would you see for all of this planning to really take on?
Yeah, we are now about to close our report, and I hope to complete this task by May, that means this month itself. And as regards the financial outlays, the ministry's budgetary allocations have already gone up substantively over the last 4 years. When we compare the 4 investments through the budgetary support to the preceding 4 years, we see a big jump. And what government has been doing is to support the budgetary allocations through the non-budgetary resources. So a large number of corpus funds have been created in the irrigation sector, in the marketing sector, livestock sector, and the fisheries sector. So the required investments are already happening. And our report has also worked out the correlation that exists between investments for gross capital formation and the growth rates needed to double the farmers' income. And we see a lot of opportunity for the private sector to come in. Normally, the private sector investments so far have happened from the farmers. In fact, 98% of the private sector investment has been coming only from the farmers, and the corporate sector has not played an important role. So various reforms that we have suggested and which already have been adopted now provide space and opportunity to the private sector. To illustrate, take the case of marketing. The new Model Marketing Act that we have shared with the state government now provides for creation of parallel APMCs in the private sector. It deregulates horticulture. It allows competition. So therefore, it enables the private sector to make investments. So likewise, through the new Contract Farming Act that we are going to introduce, or through the Land Leasing Act, or through the steady trade regime, these are all opportunities for the private sector to play the role. So the investments for gross capital formation will actually pick up with this policy framework that is facilitative of private sector participation, particularly in infrastructure and also the post-harvest management.
Dr. Dalwai, while of course the protest from the farmers is one important criteria here, but would you say that the elections in various states are yet another pressure point, in addition to the fact that we have a state and center government on the same page when it comes to implementation of this? How important would that be? Because while we have seen various agriculture schemes, the implementation of course has been a question mark. And in the recent, in the GST meeting before that, the agriculture minister also mentioned that much of almost 11 of the farm schemes would now be brought under one umbrella. How are we headed towards all of that?
Yes, I think you have said the right point that there can be always slips between the policy formulation, program designing and implementation. But the government's focus has been also on improving the speed and accuracy and the integrity of implementation. So we have advised the state governments to set up institutional mechanisms at the state level as also the district level, so that coordinated and concerted efforts happen across the stakeholders. Agriculture is not the subject only of the agriculture department, be it at the central level or the state level. Agriculture has a lot of support services that come from various departments like water resources, fertilizers, horticulture, etc. So now the institutional mechanism that we have suggested calls for all of them to sit together, and more importantly that the extension machinery has to improve. So we have also suggested for reorganizing the extension machinery, particularly in the context of improving the marketing efficiency. So as regards the implementation is concerned, there will be close monitoring from the center and from the state headquarters, and I can see a lot of enthusiasm among the state governments also. And government has always been very keen on introducing both long-term and short-term policy interventions, and the reforms that agriculture is actually now bringing out is from that perspective. And of course, we would be keeping a close watch on the implementation right up to the end level. And you must have already appreciated how the central government has been sending large number of officers as Prabhari officers to different states and districts. It is of course not only for agriculture, but agriculture is one of the important subjects. There have been officers of the level of joint secretaries, directors and deputy secretaries going to different districts in the country with emphasis on more backward districts so as to help them catch up with the rest. So I'm sure this kind of close coordination between the central government and the state government will help in improving the quality of implementation. We're also planning to set up a dashboard so that we'll be able to monitor closely the various physical and financial outlays and also the reforms that it actually is speaking about.
Well, that's a fair point. But Dr. Dalwai, also we do keep talking about productivity, input cost, marketing, risks involved, etc. But even as productivity has seen an increase in case of many crops, like sugar is a recent example, it hasn't really benefited either the mills or the cane farmers for that matter. Would you say that there is a huge need perhaps for an integrated approach?
I agree with you that productivity increases alone do not bring about increase in the income of the farmers. In fact, what we are now talking about is that transition from just green revolution based technology to income based approach, because green revolution technology talks mostly about productivity improvements, but what we are talking about today is farmers income revolution or income approach to agriculture, which will capture productivity, cost of production, rationalization and monetization of the produce. So it takes into account all the segments of the agricultural value system from one end to another. So certainly productivity alone is not important. However, we also need to catch up on the productivity front, because when we compare our productivity levels in various crops and agriculture segments with the global standards, we are much below. So therefore, we need to improve our productivity, that is grow more from less of resources. That itself will actually help the farmers, but the importance has to be on monetizing. Therefore, the post-harvest management, which includes agri-logistics, processing as well as marketing, including exports, would be the key transformation that will help the farmers to realize better prices, gain more incomes and therefore help themselves to achieve higher standards of welfare.
Well, absolutely. Value addition, monetization, increasing farmers' income and also an integrated approach are the hour of the need when we look at our agrarian crisis, which has much been on the higher side from various states. Dr. Dalwai, thank you so much for joining us with all of that sense. With that, it's completely out of time on this edition of Commodity Champions. Thank you for watching.